Here, may I like to say something. Religions develop, the country can never develop. Yeah. This is the basic theory that we are forgetting. In the last 65, 66 years, our government has totally failed to develop our rural areas, and therefore the migration to urban areas, and also polluting urban areas. You see, urban areas, if are prosperous, it is because they are industries. They are secondary sector, they are tertiary sector. In rural areas, there is nothing. They don't have primary sector doing well. They don't have secondary sector industries. They don't have tertiary, that means services there. The secondary and tertiary sector has to be developed by government only. The government is totally failing, and the urban areas or the educated class, as you call it, we are not responsible for this as much. As much our government is responsible not to developing 73% people who are still underdeveloped, and they are still to be given charities and dole-outs and handouts and narega and midday meals and all this. No, it is all useless. So, sir, we have to see that we first develop our rural areas, we create conditions and avenues so that our people are able to earn their living in a dignified way in their own areas, and do not migrate to urban areas in that fashion. You see, then our industries and the businesses shall also migrate to rural areas. Thank you.
So, I would like to speak a bit on the comment which was given here, that there is a need for a roadmap for restoring these river systems. My understanding is that most of the river systems in India, we have been able to characterize the problems, but we have not been able to understand the factors that are responsible for those problems. I mean, we know very well what is the pollution stats. We know very well what is the, stream discharge is decreasing, or whatever different services and products which are given by the river systems. But we are not able to understand the factors that are responsible for that, because it is not a single factor that determines the consequences. Now, and for any roadmap to be robust and credible, it is very important that we should be able to understand the factors and reasons that are responsible for that ailing system. Now, if you look at, our strategies which have been there, either for the river systems or even for it has always been a unisectoral approach. We are very focused in, let us say, green revolution. We are very proud that it worked well. Now see, we are revisiting it. The marginal lands, the degraded forest lands that were converted into the agricultural lands. And now on the same areas, we are seeing the farmers committing suicides. These lands used to give us a lot of productive in the beginning, but now the productivity has decreased. In the green revolution, we didn't have a multi-sectoral approach. Or even I will tell you, I had this example of Dal Lake. The government of India, the central government has sanctioned the 300 crore project on just trying to improve this lake system, because it has a historical, cultural and economic values. And one of the components of the rehabilitation of this lake is the evacuation of the people who are inside this lake, because they believe that these are the source of the problem. To some extent, maybe, they are practicing some agricultural practices there, but the solution has been given that they be removed from this lake to a place which is 20 kilometers from this Dal Lake. And they have been given housing, they have been given the land, the money for construction of houses, but it is 20 kilometers from this lake. Their livelihood is linked to the lake. They are the people who run those shikaras and all that. So will they come 20 kilometers again to that? So after 3 years, they sold that land, they sold that houses, and again started staying in the Dal Lake. This type of approaches will not work. These are ad hoc approaches. We need to have very robust strategies. And for that, we need to look at the socio-economic linkages. We need to look at the economic and development issues. And at the same time, we need to look at the scientific issues. That's I wanted to add. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about this issue of whether the way governmental water management, especially in terms of the large rivers, have progressed in India, whether they are a product of indigenous understanding of our rivers, our needs, or an imposition of experiences, ideas, structural intervention principles, mainly imported from first Europe and then United States. Now, this is a question of use of knowledge, and knowledge is always reflected through the availability of open, peer-reviewed scientific information. Now, beyond the British tradition, and here I am talking of the 70% of India's water resource coming from Himalayan sources, which is belonging to the Brahmaputra system, the Ganga and the Indus. And we do not have free access to the detailed hydrological data. You can get probably at the most half-yearly or quarterly average of flows, but that doesn't help us in research very much. The 7 IITs were given the responsibility of making a management plan for the Ganga by the Ministry of Environment through the Ministry of Human Resource Development. And it was a 1-year crash project. And 1.5 years it took for them to receive some of the very much needed data. I was in IIT Delhi yesterday. I am part of the original design group with so much restrictions that you cannot publish it openly. Now, if you cannot publish it openly, how can you see the progress of science? And this is why we have kept our own understanding, our scientific status of the knowledge of our own rivers very much stunted. And as a result, if you see the water policy of 2002 or even the draft water policy of 2012, you will see that they have almost stuck to the ideas that were initially given by the Europeans. But the Europeans have progressed in their own way. If you see the Water Framework Directive of Europe, which is the water policy for all the European countries, which is the framework policy within which they make their detailed policy, they think the target of water policy is to maintain water ecosystems in good health. This is the first sentence of the Water Framework Directive. And if you see the first sentence of our own water policy of the government, water is the most important natural resource for the economy. This consumptive approach is very traditional. And this protection of the water systems is what is needed now after a hegemonistic use of the consumptive approach for decades. But we are not understanding. We are not getting our prescription for cure. Europeans have gone ahead themselves. If today we have to import the Water Framework Directive, possibly I would say that yes, it is something very good idea to import the Water Framework Directive to our country. Till and unless we have an opening up of discourse, opening data, opening up of research on 70% of 7 resource, which unfortunately belongs to international systems, and hence somehow we think that it is in our national, it is to keep the data confidential. And this debate has been in the Ministry of Water Resources for umpteen number of years, any result. That our knowledge will not accept and we will always be short of knowledge when there is a challenge, as the climate change has very, very clearly put before us. Thank you.
Any other